My beloved in Christ, among the most precious of memories which we who have ascended since our discipleship with the Lord Christ is the memory of the 40 days in the upper room when he spoke to us of the things which would shortly come to pass, and of life as we would encounter life in the next 2,000 years, and of his own glory and public demonstration of the great victory of the Ascension. The Lord Christ anointed those of us who shared in his ministry. There was an inner circle of the 12, the one who had departed, and then there were the holy women and other disciples, making 33 surrounding the Master in the next increment of the inner core. These were assigned the holding of the witness of the 33 initiations of the cross that were to be outpictured in the next 2,000 years as the fulfillment of the Piscean conqueror and his demonstration of the victory. For the mission of the Christ in each 2,000-year cycle begins with one or two who bear witness of that truth. But that cycle of consciousness must be carried diligently by the inner circle of devotees who, when they take embodiment, are well aware that their mission is to carry on that nucleus of energy which the Master has provided. And therefore, theirs is a long-term initiation, but then not so long. Theirs is an initiation, albeit 2,000 years yet, in time and space as compared to eternity. These cycles actually are not as long as they seem. And so I was among those who was appointed to carry the flame through the centuries and to give forth an accounting of the teachings. A portion of that accounting, a very small portion, was left for public record. And although in succeeding embodiments I brought forth some of the depths and the mysteries of Christ which he revealed to us, not all was permitted, and of that which was permitted, for the most part, it was burned in the fire in Alexandria, or it was tampered with by the fallen ones, or it was lost and has not been preserved through the Church. And so for those who would truly bear the flame of initiation and carry then the increment of our light and of these 2,000 years into the new age, the fragments are few. And therefore, in order to complete that mission, I was trained to be a messenger of the brotherhood, that Jesus might give directly through me and through the matrices held dear in my causal body, that very special teaching which did not survive the continuity of the flame, of his word, of his light, of his person, and of his ministry. And so I come to you as the scribe, Mark, as I was then, younger than most, and yet close to the Lord in the household of some of the disciples. And I am grateful for those hours that we shared, for in those hours there was the impartation of a love and a dedication and the mantle of our Master that has carried us through many walks and many climbs and even in various religions. But all the while our mission was to anchor the flame of Jesus the Christ. And those teachings then were more than teachings. They were initiations. They were the transfer of the word that could not be lost because it was anchored within our souls, within our hearts, in the fiery core of the threefold flame, and within each of the 7 chakras, energy coils and dispensations which would come to the fore of our consciousness one by one, embodiment by embodiment. This then is an example of the computer of the mind of God. God projects the divine plan of an age, and he selects in every age key carriers of that divine plan. These are the serious ones, the ones who are determined on a mission of service, who, though they be torn asunder or sawed in two, will not leave their devotion to the flame and to the cause. These are the sons and daughters of God who are marked by a special sense of responsibility, because that responsibility as the commission of the Lord God is written in letters of living flame within the very core of being. Therefore, one of the most important experiences which continued for many days was the Master's outlining of the coming civilization, of which that which is recorded in the 24th chapter of Matthew is but a very small fragment. He spoke of the dispersion of the Essenes and the Hebrews and the true Israelites. He spoke of the usurpation of the flame of the chosen ones by others, of the Semitic races who were embodied in the Fertile Crescent. He spoke of the fact that these would come forth to steal the light, as wolves in sheep's clothing, stealing the light of those who were given the flame of the 12 tribes, representing the 12 hierarchies of the sun. Today, therefore, you can scarcely identify the true Israelites and the true Hebrews from among them who call themselves Jews. Jesus spoke again of these concepts and allowed John, the beloved, to record them in the book of Revelation, saying that those who called themselves Jews were not Jews, and that they had entered the temple of the Lord and the Lord's house, and made of it the synagogue of Satan. Beware then the false prophets, for these are the usurpers of the light of the true Israel and of the nation Israel, founded in this continent and on this soil, and of the new Jerusalem, the holy city, that flame of the city foursquare that is right here in your own Los Angeles. This is the land that has been called the New Israel. This is the land where those who are the lost tribes of the house of Israel have gathered from every nation and people and kindred and tongue, and therefore in the dispersion of the tribes there was the founding of other nations and other peoples. The people of the British Isles represent one of the 12 tribes, that is, some among them, and the White Russians, and some of those who are of Scandinavia and of the Germanic tribes. The dispersion then of the true Israelites has made of them a people who identify with their current nationality, for they have long forgotten that they were part of those who surrounded the mission of Jesus. He told us then that by the conclusion of the Piscean age, the children of God would no longer recognize one another, that there would be such confusion and chaos, that the children of light would not recognize each other, nor would they recognize the sons and daughters of Belial, nor would they understand that their leaders are the sons and daughters of God, and not the fallen ones who come with the wings and the power of satanic substance and of the Luciferian consciousness. And lo and behold, through that dispersion it has come to pass that the American people do not recognize their heritage as those who were chosen to receive and to carry the light of the Christ. Then the Master spoke to us of the governments which would come forth, and because the governments would be made up of those representatives mingling the tares and the wheat, the children of light and the children of darkness, there would be conflict, there would be the rumbling and the discussions, and there would be the extremists on right and left, and that they would come forth, and by the momentum of the prince of this world they would push their hatreds, their prejudices, and their pride, resulting in schism and division of the people who ought to be bearing the light of the Christ. And then he spoke to us of the coming of the witnesses of the truth and of the teaching, and how these would be sent, a certain series of messengers who would present the law, so that the true Israelites would come out from among them and out from the impostors, and be a separate people unto God, who would know one another, and who would be known by their affiliation with the name of God, I am, and by their use of the science of the spoken word. He said that they would come forth, and that he would shortly give unto John that revelation which would describe them as they who overcame by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and who love not their lives unto the death. It would be the disciples who would sing the new song. It would be the 144,000 who would ultimately respond to the teachings of the ascended masters, and the song that they would sing, no one could sing except they had the flame of the Christ. And he said that these would be the ones who would have the direct line of communication through the witnesses of the age. Our hearts rejoiced when we heard that there was for mankind salvation in store. He explained the meaning to us of his admonishment, "Tarry ye in Jerusalem until I come." The tarrying in Jerusalem is the maintaining of life in matter, for the city foursquare is the symbol of the four planes of consciousness and the four sides of the pyramid of life. And therefore he wanted to set in us the determination and the matrix that we would sustain the flame until the coming of the Christ consciousness, of the universal awareness of the Christ self, of the acceptance of the following in his footsteps. And though he prayed to the Lord that this teaching might be preserved, he also knew, given the idolatrous consciousness of the people and given the plots of the black magicians, that those fallen ones would turn Christianity into a personality cult, just as they had put upon him the purple robe and the crown of thorns, just as they had mocked him, Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews, so they would mock him down through the centuries by making of him something which he was not, by making him the object of a personality, idolatrous worship. And therefore he was so concerned that at least we, who were the inner circle, would preserve the understanding that we too were sons and daughters of God, that we could become the Christ as he did, that we could put on the mind and the heart and the soul of the Master. And he taught us of the I am that I am. He taught us of the God presence. And that is why so many of the early Christians and of the apostles could go forth to be crucified, could go forth and sing while they were in the Roman arena waiting for the lions to come. As they sang their hymns, they were in communion with that inner flame, with the I am presence, and a pillar of fire and a white light surrounded them, and they were taken up by the Lord Christ as they passed, and their consciousness was transferred to his glory. For his promise to us who received this inner teaching was this, that because we volunteered and accepted the calling to incarnate again and again, forfeiting the ascension, that he would receive us each one in the hour of our passing and take us directly to the temple of the resurrection, Jesus' etheric retreat over the Holy Land. And his promise to us was that our souls should not pass into unconsciousness, nor into purgatory, nor into the astral plane. And therefore you read the record of the saints who on their deathbed told their brothers and sisters that they saw the Lord Christ or the Virgin Mary. And you remember in my own life as Bonaventure, at the conclusion of that incarnation, as I lay waiting for the coming of my Lord, and as I received that last communion, as the Holy Brother held out to me the host leaped from his hand and entered into my mouth, a sign to all assembled that I was one who had been with him. And the presence of that substance, charged with the body of God within my form, was the alchemy whereby my consciousness transcended instantaneously that life, and I was found in the arms of Christ, welcomed by my Lord, who gave to me that benediction which we have heard again and again. Well done, thou faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many. I am here to tell you, those of you who are the serious ones, who are contemplating your service to Christ, that to know in your heart that at the conclusion of a humble life of serving, of teaching, and of praying, that your Master will be there with the outstretched hand. To know this, it is worth waiting for, striving for, suffering for a lifetime, for many lifetimes. This, then, is the patience of the saints. This is why the beloved Saint Therese of Lisieux had from childhood the desire to be a saint. She would say again and again, I want to be a saint. I want to be a saint. Can you imagine, in a church where most accept the consciousness of being sinners, of being limited, of being confined, where most are guilt-ridden and fear-ridden, a little child should come forth and say, almost with audacity according to the very teachings of the Church, I want to be a saint. Who dares declare the path of sainthood in this age? Now you see, there are many disciples surrounding the messengers of this age, many who have been studying the true teachings of the Israelites in this century. And so you see, Saint Germain has selected a white fire cord, an inner circle, to carry the dispensation of the Aquarian age. But by the law of cycles, this inner circle is wider and wider as more and more accept the alchemy of his consciousness. Jesus then imparted to us, through his electronic presence and his great love, to each one and to all assembled, the knowledge of each incarnation, the approximate dates, and the plan of service. Oh, you did not know that heaven was so precise. Well, I tell you, precious ones, this is no cause for a belief in predestination. For free will is paramount, and I assure you that those who heard those words had already agreed at inner levels to follow this course of initiation. Their commitment had been with Christ, who declared, before Abraham was, I am. Those of us who were there would not have been selected to support so great a mission had we had schism and weakness and vacillation and rebellion in our previous record. But those who were sent to play certain roles, to show up certain aspects of the human consciousness by contrast to his Christ consciousness, we bore those roles as the product of our own individual karma. And some who had not the karma volunteered to carry a certain portion of world karma, so that their garments, their countenance, their presence fit a certain personality, a certain type with whom the law required Jesus to interact in order to give forth a certain teaching. But by and large, the majority of those who played their roles in the great drama bore the roles as the result of individual karma, and thus making those roles absolutely authentic and absolutely in keeping with free will and with the law. And so opportunity came to us to witness the overcomer of the age. After he had outlined the mission and even indicated to us how the lords of karma had calculated when, if we passed our tests and our initiations, the opportunity of the ascension would come, then he began to instruct us in the inner teachings, the mysteries of the Christ, some of which you have been given by direct dictation, the science, the true science of astrology, the understanding of the cycles of karma, very close to the charting of the cosmic clock, as Mother Mary has released it for this age. He spoke to us also of the lineage of the Buddhas and of his training with Lord Maitreya, and of his closeness to the one Padmasambhava. And he spoke of the Buddhas who were to come, and of his great love for Gautama. And he told us that the karma of East and West, as it was, would prevent the uniting of these two cultures until all would be fulfilled in the Piscean age. And we rejoiced again to know, and we were almost amazed. Had it not been Jesus speaking, we would have perhaps been seized with moments of disbelief when he told us that there would be hundreds and thousands who would respond to this inner teaching, that it would not be reserved for the few, and that people would not have to fear to worship God. For he told us that Joseph would come and would lead the people of Israel to found the new nation, and that Joseph would build that nation on the foundation of the city foursquare, on the foundation of the four freedoms, which in America today are the very pillars of the Republican form of government. And we thought to ourselves, imagine meeting in public and actually being protected by the state, instead of having to run from Caesar and from Rome. We thought to ourselves, surely this is the dawn of a golden age which will come. And we rejoiced to think that we would tarry and be there to observe the early beginnings of that age. He told us then that with the balancing of certain karma and the coming of the good karma whereby mankind would know the flame of the mother within themselves and within the messengers, that with that catalyst there would be the uniting of East and West. And he even told us something which was almost not possible for us to visualize, that he would found his church, and that he and Gautama would share the authority of the church and the giving forth of the teaching. And he said, because of this, and because the mother flame would burn upon the altar of that church, that disciples would come alike from East and West, and that because they had mutual love and mutual understanding of the one light of Christ and Buddha, that they would weave a caduceus action in their lives, in their body temples, whereby the very energies of the earth and of the cycles of the earth currents, focused in East and West, would manifest the caduceus not only within the individual, but in the planetary body. And the currents of the masculine ray, anchored in the Himalayas, and of the feminine ray at Lake Titicaca, would finally come together in the perfect balanced action. And then he told us that fathers and mothers who would come together to give birth to the children of the new age would carry that flame within their homes. That father would hold the current of the East and mother of the West, and there would be the blending of cultures and of the appreciation of the within and the without, the bursting of the outer joy and the quietness of the inner communion. With this in mind, Jesus imparted to us a peace, an abundance, an awareness that as we would spend our lives, as we would set the sail of our consciousness, thousands and eventually millions would be bound by our course. And if we would take the highest road of individualization of the God flame, others would traverse the rocky heights. And if we would take the road of mediocrity, or the lowest road of degeneration, because we would do so with the flame of the Christ which he imparted, we would turn many out of the way. For the momentum of his flame imparted to us was a dispensation of considerable consequence. He trusted us. He believed in us. He gave to us the very life essence of his heart. And we knew that that was an increment of fire from the heart of the very Ancient of Days, and that if we went astray, it would require many, many centuries to recapture that precious essence of his blood, which we would have spilled upon the ground and allowed the demons and the discarnates and the fallen ones to take from us. He also knew our weaknesses. He knew our tendencies. He knew that some of us would do things that would not wholly be in keeping with the law. And yet his love was so great, and his respect for hierarchy so great, that he determined that our time had come, that our opportunity had come, and that he must believe in the God within us to carry us. And he promised us, as he promised Peter, that he would pray for us, that we might not be taken apart by the evil one. And so the mantle of responsibility was upon us, knowing well the separation of the veil with each incarnation, the loss of memory. We realized that in each succeeding incarnation, given what would perhaps become the doctrine and dogma of the Church, and given the veil, that we would not perhaps remember our embodiment with the Master, or if we did, we would deny it because we would be loyal to the doctrine of the Church, which was the denial of the law of reincarnation. And so we knew that it would be as though we were blind at times, walking as though feeling in the dark, feeling our way, led by the electrode of love within our hearts, finding the Master, finding Mary, and finding one another. And oh, how we longed to know that we would meet one another, at least now and then, though we understood that our missions would take us to every corner of the earth and far afield from that nucleus. And so his promise to us that he would greet us at the conclusion of each life was no small comfort. It was great consolation. And of course, he said to us again and again, I will not leave you comfortless. I will come to you. Oh, how we cherished these words. Oh, how we sought to remember, to fortify, to implant these concepts within our very souls, within our very subconscious, so that no one, or no form of death, or no form of government or state religion would ever take from us that inner knowing that we were one with Christ. And I can tell you that Jesus has prayed for each and every one of his flock all of these centuries, standing in heaven before the Almighty, interceding as the Savior for us, and in his retreat, and as he would walk and talk with us, imparting to us silently the emanations of his teaching. Is this not then the understanding of why you yourselves have drawn out of the depths of your souls the confirmation of the true teaching of the Christ, which you are receiving through the messengers? Most of you know that you are not hearing the law for the first time, but that you are simply making contact on the outer consciousness with the inner consciousness you have of the flame. Most of you know that the moment you hear the truth, it is as though you had always known it. And so the messengers are the reminders of the word of Christ spoken in the upper room. Much, therefore, has been given in the dictations and the pearls of wisdom, but much remains, and therefore it is my fond hope that the circle of our oneness will be intensified as the hallowed circle of the Om, and that you will band together as the early apostles and disciples and the holy women and the many who responded to our ministry, that you will gather as a cell in the body of God, and that you will realize that to you is entrusted the transference of the teachings of Christ to all mankind from the retreats of the Brotherhood, and the transference of these teachings unto the golden age. You have today the possibility, by the power of the press, to print many, many copies of the teachings, therefore making it difficult to anathematize these teachings and to destroy these books. In the early centuries, when there were only a few copies of our writings, they were easily destroyed. They were easily distorted. And so you see, the more that there is the receptacle for the libraries of this world and the private libraries of the devotees to carry and treasure the teaching, the greater will be the transference. For if it is necessary for the lords of karma to use cataclysm as a means for the transition into the new age, you can see that nevertheless much of the teaching could be destroyed. Alas, you will consider, as we considered, that that which is given at the inception of the dispensation, if it is lost, it is most difficult to retrieve. For then the torch is not passed, and there is a gap in the chain of hierarchy, and the masters must work many centuries in order to re-establish the lineage of the true prophets. See to it, then, that you guard the treasure of the teaching in a number of ways, not allowing one system to be considered foolproof, but using a number of systems and a number of places on several continents where these are treasured and stored. I have given you a glimpse of that upper room, and I well know that it is but a glimpse, and yet I perceive that it has indeed expanded the horizon of your consciousness of opportunity in service. Now in this dispensation where you find yourselves being given the opportunity to be in the inner circle, you can see that because you have been told it is possible to make the ascension in this life or in the next, that there is a great acceleration of initiation. This is because it is the seventh age and the age of freedom, and because so many souls who are ancient are coming then to the point of convergence with their own divine plan and the divine plan of the earth and of the Master Saint Germain in the Aquarian age. You therefore do not necessarily contemplate 20 or more embodiments as we did in the next 2,000-year cycle, for you are called to set the example of the path of initiation so that there can be those mass ascensions from the hillsides of the world. Therefore, your responsibility, unlike ours, is to disseminate the teaching, to teach it well and accurately and with the correct vibration, and to give the mantras with the correct intonation. For I already perceive that there is deviation from the patterns which I established, and which the Mother has established in the giving of a number of decrees, as people place their own accents and pronunciations and personality vibrations in the giving of decrees, and then others who come copy them. You can see how a dispensation can change quickly over a few generations. Therefore, if I may outline to you this most important goal, which is the conveyance of the teaching to the many children of God who will stay in the unascended state for a considerable period of time, a number of centuries, and some who will be required to tarry to the fulfillment of this age. And so the teaching must be accurately stated, accurately written, accurately studied, and then, of course, to become the teaching is the all. One of the most important reasons for studying and becoming the teaching is that when you pass it, it will not be lost as in a whisper game, when no one can recognize the beginning of the statement from its conclusion after it has been whispered through a circle of individuals. This is a problem with a transfer, especially in this age, because whereas centuries ago there was an accuracy in the word-of-mouth transition because everyone relied on word of mouth, because they did not have books, they could not read, they could not write, and therefore their memories were sharpened. They had a proper balance with nature, they ate pure foods, and so they could retain in the mind passages of Scripture. And some of you know that in the East, for thousands of years, the tradition of very lengthy passages and even entire books has been kept intact in Sanskrit, repeated from one generation to the next. But this does not happen in the West anymore, for there is not the mastery of concentration in the upper chakras. And so you see, the transmission is all, the communication is all. And be careful lest you make the karma of leaving this earth and applying for your ascension, and even balancing your karma and being ready for the ascension without having correctly transmitted the teaching. No matter how low you are on the rung of the ladder of initiation, there is always someone beneath you. As Jesus said, the poor ye have always with you. And those who are poor in spirit will look to you as teacher, and you will look to them as disciple. If, therefore, you attempt or even succeed in taking your ascension before you have anchored your mantle, your momentum, and your understanding with the one nearest you on the rung of the ladder, you will find yourself greatly handicapped from the ascended state in the completion of the balancing of your karma, or you will find that the lords of karma and Serapis Bey will not allow you to even take your ascension. Therefore be careful, and do not possess or be possessed by students who enter into that idolatrous personality cult relationship with you. They are not worthy of the teaching, nor will they retain it. Therefore be swift, be impersonal, and leave those who would be tied to your apron strings, and go forth and find the real devotees, and then give them your all. I am with you, and I have tarried with you in my love for you, beyond the time allotted in this evening, and so I will draw our conversation to a conclusion to make way for the two men in white apparel. And I will say to you, in the light of my causal body and in the very light of Lanello, that truly, as he was with me every step of the way, so I am with you each one always. And some of you can confirm this, for you have noticed when I have knocked and entered your homes, and I have supped with you, and I have sat with you and decreed with you, and talked with you, and held you in my arms of love. One of the greatest benefits of the ascended state is that through the projection of the electronic presence, I can be with each one of you every moment of the night and day, and never consider that you are imposing upon me, for I look to be welcomed, to be invited, to receive your letters, to be called to, and therefore allow me to come. For I will never take from you your opportunity for self-mastery, but I will wink at you when you outsmart your carnal mind. I am your own, your very own Lanello.